That thing.
Camera speeds.
All right, so we're back, and let's talk about a few more television programs that you were involved with. In 1995, you were one of the co-hosts of the 47th Annual Primetime Emmys.
Yes, with Jason Alexander.
Yeah.
And I remember somebody had given me these priceless earrings to wear, and they were clip-ons, and one, right before we went out, that we were supposed to walk out to introduce the show, one just fell onto the floor. So from then on, I never, please don't try to put anything on these ears. There's not enough of a earlobe there to do it.
Did you enjoy hosting? Had you done anything kind of that nature before?
No, I adored it. Matter of fact, I had one of the gowns I walked out in, because Wolfgang Puck was doing the food, I had food all over me. But they didn't show me low enough to be able to see that I had food all over me. I was going to make a joke about it, whenever I could.
Do you remember kind of the preparations leading up to that? Were there a lot of rehearsals? Did you have input on the script at all?
No, it was being written beautifully. I don't think so.
Mm-hmm. And then what was it like co-hosting with Jason?
Oh, he was a blast.
I think you guys had a bit at the beginning where you went out into the audience and served hors d'oeuvres and things like that. And you went out
if we didn't, we should have.
It looked like good fun. And then in 2000, you did a syndicated talk show for a little bit called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Yes.
What do you recall about that?
Well, the producers, there was a man and a woman, and after I did first of all, Merv Griffin was the executive producer, and Uncle Merv knows everything. So he came backstage, he said, "Show me your cue cards." And I had a stack this thick. He said, "You should never have more than 5. Nobody listened to him. And then after I did my first couple of things in front of an audience, which worked, funny, they were laughing, this man and this woman came in there. They worked, I think, at Sony, and the man just screamed at me, "We expected Barbara Walters or Oprah Winfrey." I'm going, "Well, my name was Cybill Shepherd, maybe." Anyway, I didn't say a word. I waited till they left the room, quit screaming, called my lawyer and said, "How do I make them pay me?" He said, "Just keep trying to do what they keep telling you they want to do," and they kept messing around with it. And then I was doing a PR tour in Dallas, and I was staying at the mansion on Turtle Creek, and that's when they canceled the show, and we were still on the pay, they were paying for the trip, so we had, my friend and I that accompanied me, had quite a lovely dinner.
Now, were you approached by someone about doing that talk show, or was that your idea to host a talk show?
I love the idea of my hosting. I relate to people. I listen, and sometimes I'm funny, and also, it's funny because I did something like I was a news anchor for like 5 minutes, someplace in Boston or something, and I was having to announce the death of Grace Kelly. And then I start crying, which they never want to see news people cry. That's not that.
Had you considered a career in news at one time?
Well, it would have been interesting, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. If they'd just accepted me as Cybill as opposed to expecting Oprah or Barbara Walters.
Yeah. So you had mentioned Merv Griffin. What was he like to work with? Was he really involved with the talk show?
Well, I go back to working, it seems like when I did the Merv Griffin show, it was still in black and white. I'm not sure, everybody was smoking. It was a blast to do it. Loved him. Always loved Uncle Merv, I called him. And they should have listened to him on that talk show. Who knows more about anything? Who knew more about anything than Merv Griffin?
Yeah. What was it like? I mean, you were on a number of talk shows over the years as a guest. What is that like to kind of come in? You're on the host territory. You're in either promoting something or talking about something that you're doing. What was that like for you?
Well, with David Letterman, all I wanted to do whenever I went on a talk show was to please the host, because if you can make it work with him, then it's going to be a good performance. So you get a producer. Everybody gets an individual producer. So I'd always ask the producer what would make David, as in Letterman, happy. And I had sent for some reason I was on a tour or something. I was working in Europe, and I'd sent my wardrobe. They got it 2 weeks before I was going to be on the show, and so he had it on the set. And he would talk. This is Cybill Shepherd's wardrobe, and she's coming. So when I came out, I wore a big towel wrapped around me. First time ever, probably anybody, and last time ever wore a towel on a talk show. It was fun.
You just didn't want to be in that outfit because it had been talked about all week on stage?
Well, it was just funny. That's the thing. How do you please your host? And you get a producer, and then they help you. It's you want to make Johnny Carson or anybody. It was just Johnny Carson was so wonderful. One time when I was doing that first series, The Yellow Rose, and I asked him, could you get up on the desk and let me lasso you? I'm going to rope you. And he did, and I roped him. I learned to rope. I had to learn to rope, though. That's roping a steer. Normally you're on a horse. From a junior rodeo championship. I couldn't learn it from the men. It's like men and women throw different, or maybe they used to. But it was always pleasing the host. I love doing that.
And how did you feel in general about having to do publicity for the TV shows that you were on, like making these appearances and things?
I always felt it was part of my job. Mm-hmm. That I was privileged to do the show. I was privileged to promote it and to talk about, because so many people, so much work goes into make anything good. It's just incredible. And then you can have the best people and the best script, and it doesn't work. There's some kind of magic there if you're really fortunate and you get that magic happening, then, and the camera photographs that. The camera photographs thought. I remember Peter Falk was one of my favorite actors, and when he was on Columbo, he was thinking a lot. It was never boring. Even if he was thinking 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, it doesn't matter. It's just that magic. If you're lucky enough, to have that happen, it's kind of like lightning striking, but a good kind of lightning.
Mm-hmm. Are there other actors or actresses that you saw that with, in addition to Peter Falk? Anyone that just lit up a screen?
Well, Ben Johnson, of course, and Jeff Bridges, Timothy Bottoms, Eileen Brennan, Ellen Burstyn, and Kathleen. Last picture show. I remember when I was doing picture show, there were the nude scenes, and so I was suing Playboy at one point because I had refused to do pose nude for Playboy. So what they had this, Hugh Hefner had this thing they call the black box, and he would borrow 35 millimeter prints. So if you refused to be shot for Playboy, then he would have, in his black box situation, they would take like a still out of the film, which they did out of picture show, like when I'm on the diving board or something. And anyway, I settled the suit by getting the rights to a book, the movie rights to a book called St. John, that then Peter went on to make a brilliant film, Peter Bogdanovich, with Ben Gazzara and a great cast.
How did you feel about doing nudity in that movie? Did you have any qualms about it?
Well, first of all, in the scene where I'm on the diving board taking my clothes off, when they shoot it, you don't see me. All the people that are sitting nude around the pool, I'm not there. So they have somebody standing where they're supposed to look. And then, Peter was so brilliant at this, and then when I did my part, they weren't there either. So it was, otherwise I would have felt like, I don't know, whatever. Mm-hmm. It was brilliant.
Were you ever asked to do anything on screen, either for film or television, that you were uncomfortable with?
They want, in The Heartbreak Kid, which I think is a masterpiece, directed by Elaine May, there was a love scene, and one of the producers had decided that, I should do the nude scene. And I said no, because it doesn't help. Nudity, I find often, it's not erotic in a film, it's distracting, unless it's funny. So he had decided he'd go up to the Playboy Mansion and find some, excuse my French, tits and ass that would be nude. So, and Elaine, I don't think Elaine wanted it either, but they shot it. And then they had to get my permission, because that's the way it works in our business. And I said, I'm not signing that form to permit that to be put in there. It'll make it will ruin the scene.
Did you find that in those circumstances, it sounds like Elaine had your back hit there.
Mm-hmm.
Did directors usually have your back, did you find?
You mean except for that one that I said, shut your yap?
Yeah.
Who talked too much? Oh, I was really lucky in that way. I had learned so much about it that I just tried to do the best I could under the circumstances. It used to be when I had to cry in a scene, I need 10 minutes or 15 minutes to listen to this depressing, really I only listened to when I needed to cry. Now I've gotten to the point where people will say, could you please not cry in the scene? Because it's something about being a grandmother and getting to a certain age. It's okay to, because I think those parts of the brain are close together, pain and pleasure. So I don't know. It's like it just, the older I get, the more I cry, and then the more I laugh and I cry. Like the sad, the happy.
More life experience to pull from.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember what the song was that you used to make you cry?
I listened to these beautiful songs. They're classical songs by a great opera singer. And I'm blanking on her name. She was one of the greats ever. Also listened to, who is the great Maria Callas. Anytime Maria Callas sung, it was very moving to me. She had such emotion in her voice. And that's the music. I would turn to classical music.
Why do you think that is?
And the great song, I can't remember the artist, Don't Cry Out Loud. One of the greatest, who is it? I'm looking. Okay, so Don't Cry Out Loud. What's the best thing to, it's like, if you want somebody to smile, say don't smile. If you want somebody to cry, say don't cry.
Melissa Manchester.
Oh, Melissa Manchester, the best. Don't cry out loud. Oh, I recovered all of a sudden.
Now, actually, speaking of singing, you sang on Moonlighting in the Black and White episode.
Mm-hmm.
And so did you work, Alf Clausen did the music
Yes.
on that show. Talk a little bit about, singing on camera. What that's like for you.
Well, I was a trained singer, I sang in the choir. Thank God I made it into the choir at 9 in my Episcopal church. My parents only joined it to raise their social status. Episcopal was at the top of the heap. But it was very spiritual for me. It was a great thing to sing. And then somebody suggested I started singing with a singing teacher who coached the Metropolitan Opera chorus. That was back in the day when I guess they went to cities and they had the chorus in the cities. And Sarah Beth Causey was her name. And so I had this training to sing really loud. And that was a tremendous help in the theater. I never had to be mic'd. And singing has a special, it is a very special thing for me to do. I feel it opens my heart. And that's important because the more we grow, the greater chances we have of maybe getting bigger. Well, we get bigger in some ways, and you can't help that. But you grow, just be more, feel more happiness and the sorrow. I'm gonna start to cry now. Of just the things my grandchildren do, the things my children have gone through and go through, the things our country is going through at this time, the thing that our allies, the Kurds, are going through. These are things. I'm a news hound. I'm one of those people that I take 3 newspapers. I take the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and LA Times. And I like to get my news from a lot of sources. So I don't know where that came from, where I developed that, but it's just been something. It's history. Yeah. It's history happening now.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's return to talking about a few more television programs.
Of course.
So in 2007, you started to play Phyllis Kroll on the Showtime series The L Word.
Yes.
How did you get involved with that series?
I wanted to be in the pilot. I went up for the pilot, and I didn't get chosen, and I just thought it'd be really a wonderful show to do. I'm really shocked that it was never nominated for anything. It was beautifully photographed. We shot it in Vancouver. And it was fun. It was I enjoyed it. I had a blast. And then my daughter Clementine came on. I wanted to give birth to Clementine in Memphis, and I was going to give birth at the University of Tennessee Medical School Hospital, which was a charity hospital, and my mother and my grandmother said they weren't going to visit me because I was in the charity hospital. But I'm really glad that I did that. And I remember we were in a grocery store in Memphis, and I saw a baby name book, little paperback book, and I saw Clementine, meaning calm, truthful, and most merciful. And besides that, one of the best movies ever made, I believe, directed by John Ford, My Darling Clementine, might have been John Ford. I think it was John Ford. I'm sure it was. And Henry Fonda at the end, the last shot, he's saying goodbye to this wonderful lady named Clementine, obviously. He's on the back of a horse. He takes off his hat, and he says, "Sure do like that name, ma'am. Clementine." I did a really bad. I never could do imitations. But so that, I don't know how you get a better name than that.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So what was your reaction when your daughter said she wanted to become an actress?
Well, I was mostly worried when she wanted to be a model because I knew that there was this whole thing. I mean, frankly, Cheryl Teague and I, we kind of came up together and broke out big at about the same time. And it was a period of modeling where it was okay to be kind of a normal size. I mean, they told me before I went to do the Model of the Year contest, you have to lose 30 pounds. Well, I laid on the couch and I read like an Italian cookbook and ate that. That was back in the day when it was the grapefruit diet. I mean, that really dates me. But I lost 15 pounds maybe. But they gave me that Ole Cassini hot pink bikini with a long floor-length cape trimmed in golden sequins. And then when I flashed that, opened that up at the end of the runway, my stomach was the flattest it would ever be again. But it was that was great because that contest, all they wanted was they wanted to photograph someone to win that would really be a great success as a photographic model. And I remember when I won it, I had this really thick accent, and I was crying. I can't believe it. And he said to me, "Well, you think you're going to make $50,000? You're guaranteed $50,000. And how do you feel about that?" "Well, I hope I can make it." And I had my hair was way too blonde. The first thing they did was send me to someone because my mother was just obsessed with my hair color since I was a towhead. I had that natural blonde hair. And anyway, so the first thing they did once I won the contest was to get my hair to look with other colors other than just white blonde.
So it sounds like you had these restrictions kind of placed upon you in the modeling world. Did you feel that in film and television as well? Were people telling you how you had to look and be?
No, the thing is that guy who took that first that I was in, that first cover of Glamour that I did, I was in 105 pictures on the inside of the magazine. And I only know that because my grandmother wrote it. Maybe it was 101 pictures inside. But that photographer, Frank Horvath, had said, I remember the night before the trip, because I'd never been hired for Glamour. I'd gone up there, they used to call them go-sees, and showed my book, never get hired. And this guy kind of glanced over and said, "She'll do." And then, that started that cover and everything, and started that. It wasn't, then it got really strange where the models had to be, they didn't want pretty or beautiful. They just wanted like skinny. I call it heroin chic, but maybe that's insulting to somebody, probably.
So you were concerned that Clementine would feel these pressures that you had felt?
I didn't want her to be under any pressure. I didn't feel it because I was, since I was born in 1950, I was an athlete. My dad taught me to play football in the front yard, which was a very useful thing to learn to do because you knew how to, I could take pretty much anybody out if they started to make moves. But did I tell you about the time my modeling agency took me up to a suite in the Plaza Hotel, and there was this guy there, and he was in a movie, and so as soon as my modeling agent, Stuart Cowley, left, this guy said, "Well, let's rehearse the love scenes." I said, "I don't think so." And when he got up there, Stuart, I said, "Don't you ever leave me like that alone. Don't you ever leave me alone like that again." And I had chaperones. Whenever they were flying me out to do screen tests with Roger Vadim or somebody, I had somebody, her name was Donna DeCita.
I mean,
Her name.
what was that like for you after something like that happened?
Well, I was always aware of that because, it didn't just happen overnight. I mean, obviously, I had the great Nate Atherton, who had been head of OBGYN, University of Tennessee Medical School. And then he was a family friend. So I mentioned to my mother that my periods were irregular. And she said, well, I'll go see Nate. He was in private practice. So I went to see Dr. Atherton, and he said, "Do you have a boyfriend?" I said, "Yes." "Do you love him?" I said, "Yes." "Are you going to marry him?" I said, "Yes." "Here's a prescription. Make sure you take one of these pills every day." Hello. Didn't tell my parents. Great good fortune. And that's why I've stood up for so long and led 3 of the largest marches in history for choice and also for gay and lesbian, LBGT and Q.
Well, talk a little bit about your activism.
The first volunteer job I had, once I'd just gotten to New York, was stuffing envelopes for Planned Parenthood. And since I'd had that blessing of that friend of the family sparing me, I mean, how many botched abortions had Dr. Nate Atherton had to try to save the mother? It's just you, and so that was an almost miraculous great blessing. And I am so grateful. And also I have been sober for a year and a month. And everybody in my family was an alcoholic. So when it was time to quit, I'm telling you, going to those AA meetings, it was a great thing. And that serenity prayer, I mean, that means a lot to me.
That's great. Congratulations.
I have a little prayer book from Holy Communion Episcopal Church. I chose to be confirmed. It's a little black. They gave it to me for free. And in it, it is signed by Edward P. Matthews. Edward P. Matthews. That was his first job as an Episcopal priest. He would end up rector of Trinity Church in Manhattan.
Wow.
That's not right, Edward P. Matthews. Daniel! Sorry. Do the retake. Daniel P. Matthews. Daniel P. Matthews.
There you go. Perfect. So speaking of LGBTQ rights, going back to the L word, you said that was a really fun show for you.
Oh, it was a blast.
What made it so enjoyable?
We had great directors. We had great scripts. We were being photographed so beautifully. And it was just fun. It was a little strange because it seemed like I was in another makeup and hair trailer. There was like the main people in the cast, and it was kind of like a little bit of a caste system in the sense that the original people sat by themselves and didn't talk to us, and I'd just go up and say, "How y'all doing? Hi, I'm Cybill Shepherd. How y'all doing?" They'd look at me like I was crazy.
And Jane Lynch became your love interest.
Oh,
on
I
the
love
show.
Jane Lynch. Oh, my God. I adore her, and in the scene, she was supposed to kiss me. I put the smackaroo on her, baby.
That's great. So let's talk a little bit about the client list. You
Yes.
were in the original TV movie and the TV series. Okay, so tell us about playing your character Lynette. What drew you to her role?
Well, it was a great drama about a mother and a daughter, and I love that. It was beautifully photographed. One thing I've always been very particular about is whoever is the director of photography is going to be my best friend. And, I'm just going to make sure that, because, the more it's like, make sure you are kind, and you have a rapport going with especially the director of photography. And that was a really rather painful story. It was a kind of terrible story. But it was, we having a chance to show that story about what sometimes people have to do to make a living is an important story because it really happens.
And what was the storyline for people who might not be familiar with the show?
Well, Jennifer Love Hewitt is a massage therapist, and then she's squeezed, I can't remember, for funds. She doesn't have enough money for her children, and then she becomes goes further in terms of the massage, just doing a massage. The client list, yeah.
And what about your character, Lynette? How would you describe her?
Well, I mean, I think understanding, difficult, judgmental. It's very easy, you know, to be judgmental. And there was this one director who shall remain nameless, and I was doing a phone call in that show, meaning it's just me holding a phone. There's no other actors. The script supervisor's doing the other part. I would say like 1.5 sentences, he said, cut, do it again. He kept doing that. Cut, do it again. Cut, do it again. And I don't know why I didn't go over and say, you know, acting is kind of like starting an engine. Why don't you let me just get the oil in the engine going, and then, you know, just let me get through it, because that's very debilitating.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's a great film that was made. Unfortunately, the title was changed from September to Memphis. That was a television movie for Turner. And it was, I don't know why we changed it. September is a novel written by Shelby Foote, who was a friend of mine. And it's about 3 white racists come up from Mississippi and kidnap the only grandson of the first black millionaire in America. And it's an absolute brilliant film. I don't know where you'd find it. It was Turner. Jay Roy. Hi, Jay. He's at HBO, I think, out west.
So you acted in that, and were you involved?
Executive producer,
Yeah.
yes.
So talk a little bit about kind of putting that TV movie together.
Well, the thing is, since I worked with Peter first, and then I worked with Elaine May, so I was working with the best directors in the world, and I learned. That was my acting lessons. So I was just aware of how to, you know, you want everybody to be comfortable. People have to have their space in terms of actors. Sometimes they need a little time, you know, not half a day, but, you know, just sometimes a few minutes to get to that point where they're ready to do the scene. And also that it's really this miraculous, it's a miracle when anything is good. And you just take a chance on that. And I'm so grateful, enormously grateful for the chances, the directors, the parts I've had. Yes, the Cybill show only lasted 89 episodes, and nobody wanted to do the last 2, and I said, we're doing them. And I'm almost singing it. Of course, I cut it out. But still, it's just wonderful. I love it. I'm ready to go to work. I'm working now, aren't I? Right, that's right. Yeah. I'm working right now.
Are you on a current project?
No, but I'm ready for one. Did you get that message? I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille. A lot of people turned down that great film. What's it? Sunset Boulevard. I always wanted to do a comedy version of that.
Oh.
Like a sitcom.
Mm-hmm. That would be interesting, definitely.
Yeah, it would. You don't know who's living in the other part of your house, you know, and you wander over there, and there's a lot of interesting, different people, different kinds of people.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned Memphis. You've done several TV movies throughout your career. And you actually played Martha Stewart twice in 2 separate TV movies. Talk a little bit about playing Martha and how those 2 roles differed for those 2 projects.
Well, I met Martha Stewart, I think at some PR thing. It seems like it was in New Orleans. I just was introduced to her. And then it was Martha Inc., I think was the first one. And in this, not in all countries in the world, but in this country, if you write a book about someone and it's true, then they can't sue you. In other words, if you lie about someone in a book, they can sue you. So Martha Inc., that was true, the way she was. I had to learn how to chop food without looking at the camera. Knuckles to the blade. I went to a chef. I said, show me how not to cut my fingers off, you know. And I had a great director for that, Yves Simoneau. No, did he direct? Who directed Martha Inc.?
Let me see
The first
here.
Martha was not. That was who?
Jason Ensler?
Yes, he's a brilliant director.
So when you're playing a real life person, did you study footage of Martha? Like, what do you do to capture a real person?
I think that you're really, instead of, it's more like you're channeling the person. So you don't really have to, you don't want to, I don't want to do like try to really imitate her. It's got to come channel through me with the same sentiments and stuff. And then we did another one, Martha in Jail or something.
Behind bars.
Or
Martha
behind bars. I remember we were doing this scene in the courtroom, and the director had forgotten to get a close-up of me, and I said, you might want a close-up of Martha in this courtroom scene. So,
What do you think? Why did you suggest that? What was your instinct?
you're doing a movie called Martha, what is it called? Behind Bars, and you're showing her in the courtroom, and so you're going to get a close-up of everybody but Martha. What's wrong with that picture? Logically, it doesn't make much sense to me.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. So we have a few more just summing up questions,
Sure.
but are there any projects that I haven't brought up that you'd like to speak a little bit about? Either television or film, something that impacted you or your career?
Mimi Leader directed me in, I think, 2 or 3 films. She's one of the best directors I've ever worked with. I just loved working with her. And I remember at one point we were shooting down in a really tricky neighborhood. I mean, a dangerous neighborhood. And so we were, I had a police escort, off-duty plainclothesman to protect me. And so we were across the street from a building that was about 6 stories high, and he saw someone pointing a gun at me, and he went over there to try to find that. But he couldn't find the gun. But it was, it's just, there are places that, are dangerous. There's still so many dangerous places. And hopefully we're getting better at understanding, neighborhoods and being better neighbors.
Yeah. What do you think it was about Mimi that you connected with as an actress and director?
Oh, she was just great directors I don't know how to explain it, but they normally don't use a lot of words. Like if you just kind of get that, you want to find the language that sparks in your actor what needs to be there. And they're going to have to find it themselves. But so sometimes finding those right words are the key to it. And she was just one of the best I ever worked with.
Fantastic. So just a few summing up questions
Sure.
now. How do you think the industry has changed since you first started in the business in the 1960s?
I just thought of something.
Yeah, please.
Before the scene in the last picture show, when I enter the theater next to the movie screen. And then I go back, and this is my introduction in the film, and I say to Timothy Bottoms and another wonderful actress, what y'all doing back here in the dark? But so before I went to do that scene, Peter said to me, I don't know who I want to sleep with more, you or JC. So I've got this look on my face like, what y'all doing back here in the dark? Ooh.
Do you think he said that specifically to get a response out of you?
It worked. It certainly worked.
Mm-hmm. Are there other things like that directors have done that have gotten an immediate response out of you like that?
Yes, I mean, I've worked with so many wonderful directors. Scorsese was very interesting because when we did Taxi Driver, I don't know if it was union or not. We were shooting in what they call checker cabs, those great big cabs. So that meant that you could have the sound man in the front seat by the driver. You could have a cameraman there was a flip-up seat on those across from the bench seats in the back, and another flip-up seat where you could have the cameraman, or vice versa. So we got a lot of that. We shot a lot of that, kind of stealing it. We felt like we were stealing it. Mm-hmm. And that last scene, that wonderful last scene when I'm in that cab and Michael Chapman was the director of photography. And the way he shot, looking at De Niro's eyes and you see me in the rearview mirror, that's just classic. I was so grateful. I've just been, I think, the luckiest person alive.
How do you think opportunities for women have changed since you started in the 60s?
Well, I think that early training, learning how to be, taught how to play football in the front yard, like in first grade, set me up to defend myself. And, I'd like to think, I think it's changing, but I also wonder how much it's changing. I just finished Ronan Farrow's Catch and Kill, which is a riveting. I think about Harvey Weinstein. Oh, he's so repulsive.
I mean, when everything came out about Les Moonves last year, what was your reaction?
I wasn't surprised, but I guess I was the lucky one that got away. But then my show didn't keep going, but I'm very grateful that we had the 89 episodes, maybe it's 87.
Talk a little bit about just fame and celebrity, which you experienced at quite a young age. 18, 19, 20 is when you got discovered. And you've definitely, there were ups and downs in your career with theater and film and then coming back on television. Talk a little bit about how fame has affected you.
Well, I think when I won the Model of the Year, one of the things I was required to do was the cover of 17 magazine. It didn't even look remotely like me. And so I don't know. Then it was the glamour was the big breakthrough. And that man saying, stop posing, But as far as today, it's very strange. I can't tell from the magazines that I look at that I'm not really understanding. It doesn't seem like beauty, whatever traditional beauty is valued that much. But then why should it be? Because the more types of women, types of their look, the better. And also the whole freedom thing of questioning. And that my sister was a lesbian. But she was living in Memphis, Tennessee, and I had talked to her when I was getting ready to go. Could I talk about you? And she said, no. It was still forbidden in Memphis. It may still be, but it's getting safer now. I'm hoping and praying. But certainly, they did. First of all, they didn't want me to lead the march and carry the banner, and I said, would Martin Luther King have objected to me marching with him because of the color of my skin? And so they let me do that. And pride, I have a very special place in my heart for pride, for everybody to have pride and to be able to follow your bliss. I think who was that famous guy that had that? Follow your bliss. I can't remember his name.
Well, it sounds like you've tried to use your celebrity for good to get awareness.
Well, I was so lucky again. Dr. Nate Atherton giving me birth control, not telling my parents. That was extraordinary. And so I felt like I've always felt this, and it's really strange what's happening right now. The whole kind of throwback to taking away our right to forced pregnancy as punishment. That is a crime.
Yeah. Over the years, have you paid attention to reviews or critiques, things like that? Do you ignore that and just go with your gut?
I did a one-woman show called Curvy Widow. I did not write it. And is everybody okay out there? Okay. I did a one-woman show called Curvy Widow that was written by someone else. And I was interviewed I was in Atlanta doing it, And the man who was a critic at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution interviewed me first before he did the review of this play. And he gave it a scathing review. And it was standing ovation every night, except the one night after I'd read that review. And there's the motto of the story. You know, you can't, whatever you have going on, it has to be left. You know, when you start to walk into that door, when you're going on stage, everything has to be left behind. So that was the one night I didn't get a standing ovation, was because I'd read that stupid review. And then finally another guy at the newspaper noticed it was selling out, and you know, standing ovations every show, and he came, he asked for permission, he came in, and then they put the director and I on the front page of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. So.
What about, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say something about all this hullabaloo about all the statues of Robert E. Lee, for instance, and the traitor. You know, he was a traitor. He went to West Point. If he had agreed to fight for the Union, the Civil War would have been over. But this whole thing about history, how are we going to keep history? We don't want to just destroy it. Let's just put it someplace else. And they did that very smartly where I was staying, in a place like right there in Atlanta, in one of the suburbs. They had a Confederate museum. So you can go into, if you want to see that, it's part of history. And we're going to repeat history if we don't remember it. So I believe in, you know, finding a place, for instance, in the only equestrian statue in my hometown of Memphis, Tennessee, was of Nathan Bedford Forrest, and he and his wife were buried. He was the man who founded the KKK. Okay, so that was a horrible thing. And finally they moved it, I believe, hopefully, so that you can, if you want to see, we don't want to, like I said, if we don't remember and history, we will repeat it again. But it took forever to get that moved. And interestingly enough, what is considered by a lot of people the first great film ever made is directed by D.W. Griffith, Birth of a Nation. And the original ad for that was a white horse rearing up with a man in a Klansman suit riding it. And it revived the KKK.
The power of film.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about some mentors. You mentioned Orson Welles and Peter. Are there other people that have been influential in your life in that way?
Stella Adler.
Talk about her.
Stella Adler is the only person that ever studied directly with Stanislavski. And that was, and she believed, and she learned that from Stanislavski, I guess, that 50% of your performance comes from exterior things. In other words, it's the opposite of the actor's studio is all internal. This says that, you know, like the clothes you're wearing, the purse you're holding, the prop you have, all those things help you find the character. So that was, and I never took her class, but I audited it. I audited it. Oh, I've had too much ginger ale today. I don't know what's gotten into me.
Do you wish that you had had any, like, a formal acting training? Or do you think you are the way you are because of the way that you came up in your career?
My acting teachers were some of the best directors and performers ever. And that, I don't know, that's an incredible thing. I'm deeply grateful and will be forever for, you know, it's, you just can't erase, they try to erase them. You know, they redo The Heartbreak Kid. I'm sorry, it was a masterpiece. And I was almost not cast in it. I think I told you that. No, maybe I didn't. I think, okay, now I'm blanking. I'm thinking of Eileen Chapin. That's not right. Who directed The Heartbreak Kid?
Elaine May.
Thank you, Elaine May. I was blanking. Well, I don't remember now what I was going to say. Oh, well, she had decided she wanted this person to play my part, but the woman had dark hair. And when they tried to make her blonde, her hair started to fall out. So it was like the night before. we were going to fly to location that I got to see she and the great man, the most successful playwright, Neil Simon, in history. And that was like incredible luck.
Yeah. So did you talk with Neil about the script and?
No, I just knew that we couldn't change a word. You know, he wrote it based on a Bruce J. Friedman short story, and he was, and still is, he was the most successful Broadway writer and producer in history, and that's why they have a theater, Neil Simon Theater. Actually, there was a great actress that had a theater. What was her name? Can't think of her name, but they tore down her monument, and she said something, Helen Hayes, it's not often you outlive your monument.
So you've shared some of the advice that Orson had given you over the years, and Peter. What advice would you give to an aspiring actor or actress?
Well, you can't just study. I don't know. It's a tricky thing. I think it was Cagney said, "Stand up, tell the truth." So even if it's lies, you know, I always think of that great film. Alan Dwan, I think, directed it with Cagney, where he blows himself up at the end. He's standing on top of a gas tank, and he's getting ready to blow himself up. And he says, "Top of the world, Ma! Top of the world!" Bam! Blows himself up.
You have such an incredible film library in your head. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, I would see all the great films. I mean, you can learn as much, if not more, if you get to do both. See all the great films. You know, you can. If you read Peter Bogdanovsky, any of his books, he'll tell you what movies to watch. And then also just do theater, because you learn, because the theater, like I said, it's a great democracy, because, you know, even if you don't have any lines. I remember when I was doing the Broadway production, I was replacing Candice Bergen in The Best Man by Gore Vidal, and there was a wonderful actress who had no lines, but she would tell me, because I only had 2 weeks rehearsal. And it was on a huge Broadway stage with 3 turning sets. So, okay, Cybill, go sit on the couch now. All right. Now, Cybill, go to that doorway. Okay. And so because it was always turning, so she would show me where to go. And then for the bows at the end, I was completely lost because I'm nearsighted too. And so I would just grab the back of John Larroquette's belt, and he would lead me through the right doorway. Then I'd let go when we came out, and I think a couple of times there was an American flag that came down and kind of bopped me on the head, but it wasn't heavy. It wasn't too heavy. And I'd drop my purse at the end. And you know, the thing about it is when I first would come on the stage, there was such an enormous response from the audience, which was thrilling. And I always felt a little bit that I failed because I could never quite have that response. Of course, they sat there for so long through 2 intermissions. So
was doing television like not in front of a live audience, like Moonlighting didn't have an audience? Did you get that same kind of feedback when you'd finished a scene? Did you know you'd done it well? Or?
Oh, yes.
Yeah? Yeah.
If you've had fun and you really feel bad, and you're supposed to have felt bad in the scene, and you still feel bad, you know.
Yeah. So we here at the Television Academy have been conducting these oral history interviews for over 20 years now.
Thank you so much for asking me.
We're so honored to have you in the collection. What do you think is the value of preserving these kinds of behind-the-scenes stories from within the industry?
I think that for anybody that wants to be in the industry, who's curious about what's behind the camera, how did they get there, that these interviews will help, enlighten them. And because a lot of times there's no straight way to get to where you want to go. Sometimes it's a maze, sometimes it's a labyrinth. In a labyrinth, you don't get lost, and a maze is the one you get lost in. But so you have to, the more you can hear about how people navigated their particular journey, the better it is, because everybody can have a very different kind of, way to get there. And so just get as much experience as you can.
What would you say is your proudest career achievement?
Maybe not winning an Emmy, even though everyone I ever worked with won one.
Why is that?
I don't know. I was just being a little sarcastic. But there's a big old statue right there, and I want it, you know?
There is.
Turned into Marlon Brando. It's mine. My little cheeks are mine.
You did win 3 Golden Globe Awards. You've
Yes,
2
the Hollywood
for
press
moonlighting.
has been tremendously generous to me.
And then our final question that we asked everyone is, how would you like to be remembered?
Well, I'm going to be buried in a memorial park, so there are no headstones. And they asked me, I went there when I was writing that first memoir. We visited there, and the guy was saying, well, do you want your picture on your, it's like they put it on it's like where your feet would be when you're underground, dead. And would you like to have a picture of you there? And I said, well, is there anybody else famous that's been buried here that's had their picture? And they took me to see Charlie Rich, who was an extraordinary singer. And he didn't just sing country songs. He's such a great singer. But I went to see his picture, and I thought, didn't look remotely like Charlie Rich. So I said, no, I think... For a while there, I thought what was I going to say? Dance every chance you get. Or we will make this a comedy yet.
That's great. Thank you so much for sitting down with us today, Cybill. It's been a pleasure.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
All right.
Cool.